Hey, peace to the family. Welcome to another episode of We Charge Colonialism Podcast and Book Club. I am Ikemba Ojore, host of We Charge Colonialism Podcast and Book Club.
Peace, everyone. This is Frank, host for the Revolutionary Repatriation Educational Lecture Series every Sunday at 1 p.m.
Right on, right on. And we are the organizers of We Charge Colonialism, an anti-colonial Pan-African think tank, think and do tank, and it is our objective to make sure that we're doing the work to bring about the liberation of African people. The third of our trio is not going to be here today. Sister Natasha is not feeling too well, so want to wish her a speedy recovery and hope that she'll be back with us next week. We Charge Colonialism Podcast and Book Club. During our podcast, we have our weekly roundup to start off our podcast, where we go around and talk about the experiences of African people throughout the world as it pertains to colonialism, things that we're doing and things that we need to do to overturn this relationship and make sure that we're countering the colonial media, the narrative that the colonizers put out that is definitely in their own interests. So we want to make sure that we're putting out information that's in the interests of African people. That is our objective, and we are African people, unapologetically African. And I think that has to be a strong message too to put out because many of us take on these colonial identities. Many of us try to integrate and reform the system. But when we're talking about becoming African, going back to who we were before we came in contact with Europeans and building from there and building a society that is in the interest of African people, I think we can begin to change things in the world, not just for ourselves, but just change the world and our relationship to the environment, things that the European really could care less about, So with that being said, we're going to get into our weekly roundup, and then in the second part, we'll continue the reading of Kwame Nkrumah's The Revolutionary Path. Looking forward to continuing that reading. I'll put a link in the chat for those who want to have access to the book and follow along. The link is also in the description. So before we go into the weekly roundup, though, I want to ask everybody to like and share. Make sure you like and share. And if it's your first time joining us, make sure you subscribe to the channel so we can get our numbers up. I know that there's an algorithm thing. So when you like and share, we can get more people to see what we're putting out, because trust me, the colonizer does not want people to know that we're having these discussions. So it's important that we do the work. Hey, Uhuru, Conrad, welcome, man. Thanks for joining. Yeah, our peoples is coming. I appreciate y'all. So we're gonna go into the weekly roundup. Frank, you want to set it off? Shit. I think you're on mute. Yeah, you're on mute.
I was saying, bring a story out what I'm putting this out.
Oh, you want me to do mine?
Yes.
Okay. So the story I'm covering. Let me start off with the video. I'm going to the Democratic Republic of Congo. I want to play 2 minutes of this clip, and I have a newspaper article. I'm gonna put both links in the chat as well, so that you can have access to it. Because this is from a documentary that's over an hour long, and it was put up on the channel. I might have talked about this doc before, but it was put up on YouTube about 6 months ago. And I want to encourage everybody to check out this documentary. It's talking about what's going on in the Congo. As you can see, Cobalt Challenge, the dark side of the energy transition. So I'm going to press play. Make sure y'all able to see it. Make sure y'all see it. Okay, cool. So I'm going to play about 2.5 minutes of this.
Minerals for the agenda that the international community has adopted, the consensus that we need to move to carbon neutral emissions in the world requires electric vehicles, it requires renewable energy, all of which require strategic minerals coming out of the Congo. First and foremost, one could say, would be cobalt.
Kolwezi is the cobalt capital of the world. We're here in the heart of the Copper Belt, an industrial region located in the southern part of DRC and neighboring Zambia. A century of mining has shaped the landscape. The DRC's biggest copper and cobalt reserves are located in the provinces of Lualaba and Upper Katanga. Foreign corporations are exploiting this immense wealth. Of the 19 copper-cobalt mines in the region, 15 are owned by the Chinese. They share the business with the Swiss Glencore Group, which operates 2 of the world's most productive mines, and Eurasian Resources Group.
Cobalt is transported normally by truck down to South Africa. It's loaded on ships in Durban, and then it's shipped from Durban to China, where it's processed into battery chemicals, and from there it ends up in the wider supply chain. Right now, global demand for cobalt is in the region of 140,000 tons, 150 maybe, but we're expecting that to rise to 250 in the next 5 years. There's a lot of new demand which is going to come onto the market, and we're going to need to find supply for it.
A ton of cobalt can fetch more than $70,000 on the world market. The mineral, which often occurs together with copper, has enlivened mining corporations since the battery market exploded 10 years ago. They are making more and more profits, while residents in the mining regions live on less than $2 a day.
Nous, les populations qui vivons à côté de l'exploitation minière, je crois que
What about us, the people who live in the area around the mines? You've seen what Kolwezi looks like. There are no schools, hospitals, or streets. The people don't have access to drinking water. Even those who do have water can't drink it because it's contaminated with acid. The natural waterways that were in a few of the villages have already been poisoned.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. I mean, it's a pretty good documentary that's exposing a lot. I mean, we could really sit through the whole documentary and have a discussion. But I wanted to play that particular part, and I'll share the link just to show a part of the contradictions that exist there. One thing it mentioned was the 15 in that region, how 15 of those mining companies are owned by the Chinese, right? And a few of those companies are working with Glencore, a Swiss company. And again, when we're talking about neo-colonialism, this is what we're talking about. Where the African leaders who are the African leaders, right? That it is allowing this to take place, where companies outside of the Congo, are able to rake in billions of dollars annually. And it kind of goes to the story that I want to discuss. Let me get to this real quick so I can pass it to you, Frank. I'm not going to read all of this, but that's a serious contradiction. And then you have the people who are living in this area who are living on less than $2 a day, but they're probably bringing in tons. I want to do the research for that region alone, like how many tons a month that they are producing. Because on the U.S. market, they said, a ton goes for 70,000, probably more. But these are people who are living on less than $2 a day, living no streets, paved streets, no schools, water is tainted. So, serious contradiction right there. This is what the president is doing. Tshisekedi, who is the president, I think he's serving his second term right now. And this article is called "Uncertainties Remain with Renegotiated Chinese Mining Deal in DRC." And it kind of speaks to the contradiction that existed with the last mining deal, where, these resources are supposed to go into infrastructure and help the people of the Congo, but through corruption and maybe some of those resources not even, the Chinese not holding up to their end of the bargain, the people aren't seeing are reaping the benefits of these negotiations or these deals that are being negotiated. So the Democratic Republic of Congo President Felix Tshisekedi has promised to use $7 billion from a renegotiated Chinese mining deal to build roads and infrastructure, but his critics say that the new agreement lacks transparency and is unfavorable towards Congo. In a surprise announcement last weekend, I always mess his name up, Tshisekedi, there we go, said that talks between his government and a consortium of Chinese investors over rebalancing the so-called sickle mines mining agreement would bring in $7 billion to the Congolese treasury. The sum represents a huge and possible transformative opportunity in an impoverished Central African country of about 100 million people, where the national budget this year is set to reach $16 billion. The deal was first made public last Saturday when Tshisekedi referenced the sickle mines deal during the inauguration speech for a second term in office in front of tens of thousands of people. There is a thorny issue of the opening up of our regions, for which a solution in terms of financing has just been made possible, he said. Negotiations over sickle mines has been underway since last year, after Tshisekedi, as well as numerous analysts, described the original 2008 deal, going back 2008, right, 16 years now, as deeply unfair to the Democratic Republic of Congo. It said, why did it take 16 years to even, fix a broken deal, right? How much money, how much robbery and theft then happened over the last 16 years? And it's been happening longer than that. And this is how the rich get richer and the poor stay poor. In return, the Chinese investors were supposed to build $3 billion worth of infrastructure across the country using the proceeds from the mine. And when we're talking about 3 billion, 6 billion, 7 billion, right? If they're willing to put that into the infrastructure, think about how much money is being generated if they're willing to give that amount of money up. So there's a lot to, to like really go into this, but Frank, you had any thoughts? You can go right ahead. I'm gonna share these links.
Yeah, exactly. Again, this go to, just what we been saying, and other who came after us, which we are following their footsteps, have been saying the same thing. That is to say, Europeans have no solutions to any African problem, and that includes China. Now, someone may say the Chinese are a little bit much different, right? But look, the reality here is the Chinese are not much different. Even though we may say the Chinese come with different approach, different model to build railroad, to build some kind of infrastructure. The reality here is it's all the same. The European use a model of infrastructure where they build road and railroad, right, to transport their raw material from the mine, okay, to the port, right? So what did the Chinese do? The Chinese came with different approach. Okay, instead of all going to the African to build railroad from the raw material to the port, right? We can go with different approach. For example, we can build roads, okay, to some area, but it may not be standard as we have in Europe or as we have in China, but we can't just focus on from the mine to the port. We can build roads somewhere, okay? We can build some infrastructure somewhere okay, like some buildings and put it there for government building, for government operation, which of course the European or the American did not do. We can give them governmental, infrastructure like buildings, right? We can do that. And the Chinese have been very successful in doing that. However, here it is. The reason why we say the Chinese are not different, even though their model are different from America and Europe, here it is. You can never have a nation without 8 people being the engineering, without 8 people being a doctor, without 8 people being the society, or the scientists, without 8 people being the lawyer, all right? If you don't have those people, without 8 people being the builder, without 8 people being the teachers, if you don't have such society, you're going to have an open land, an open field of a nation that is being exploited by aliens. And when I say by alien, I mean by America and by Europe and by China and by whosoever that we think in our mind we are partnering with. The question here is, who is America's partner to come and build America? Who is Chinese partner to build China? Who is Australia partner to build Australia? The American build America. Okay? We know who built America, even though, according to history, black people. But the issue here is, what we're trying to say here is, African did not build America. Okay? If we want to take the slave out. We are saying America or the American government did not go to Africa, or did not go to China and bring them here to build, to sit down, and then the Chinese use the American resources if they have some, and then they build America while Americans sit. All right? That's the point we're trying to make here. The Chinese, America did not go to China to build China. The Chinese built China. All right? So every society, the people within that society build that society. How did they build it? They educate their people, build the infrastructure for their people, and their people maintain that infrastructure and continue with that infrastructure, okay, in a different, sophisticated way, according to generation that come after generation. All right? And if we feel as African and African leaders and African authority to do that, and we think we will depend on Europe, we think we will depend on America, we think we will depend on China, we will never build and we will never go anywhere. And in fact, this go to what I'll be talking about tomorrow in terms of Liberia, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit. If you look at a trend right now, look, the European, the colonizer, they are way ahead of us. They think ahead of us. And the reason why they think ahead of us, because they put their interests first. And because we Africans do not put our interests first, that's why we don't think ahead of us or ahead of the enemies. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at a trend, the recent trend going on in Africa, the African leaders are in their 90s, already old, who don't have vision for the next generation. They think that the only way the African continent will develop, they think that the only way the African nations will develop, right, is to partner with America, Europe, or the colonizer, is to have OSA partnership, is to have World Bank partnership, is to have those partnerships, but not to partnership with the African continent, okay, or with the African nation worldwide. No, but to partnership with the colonialists, with the enslaver. That's the only way we will rise up. And the issue to which we are fixing, it is caused by these people. How can we partnership with these people? We have been partnering with them from memorial, from Rock of Ages, and nothing have happened. So what happened here is the colonizer, the European, American, and when we say American folks, black folks, we're not talking about you. You are not American. You are not identified. All right. You still have names that they call us with. So when we are saying American, it does not go to black people here. We are talking about Washington, D.C. and the people that control Washington, D.C. Now, these people, right, they have understood the trend that the new generation of Africans, the youth, They have the mindset that we don't have time for the Americans, we don't have time for the Europeans, we don't have time for the Chinese. Okay, we have time for Africa and Africans come first. They have come to realize that this new generation of African youth have the mindset of Pan-Africanism. African, the diaspora, and African on the African continent, we are one, we are uniting. And they have a mindset that if we can't do it, no one will do it for us. And if we are to succeed, we have to be at the forefront. They have recognized that the youth, we must get them out. Did you remember when the Israelis, how they call it, consider, along with the American government, they went and sat down in a crafty council and was saying, the issue to Israel is the new generation of black folks. Pay attention to that. They know that the youth, they cannot contend with the youth. They will be content, okay, with the older generation who still think they have to partnership with the colonialists, who still think they have to be a neo-colonialist. That's the kind of situation we are in. And Liberia have formed part of that situation. Liberia is now part of Ghana, the Morovia group. I respected that country, and I still have respect for Ghana because of the history of Ghana. But the current leader that we have in power, they are all bourgeoisie, and that is why the colonialists or the Westerners, right? They have realized that we have to make sure all these African nations, every election that come, we should put in these old folks.
Yo, you said it all. I mean, that last point you made too about these leaders being bourgeoisie, they will sell you out every time. During these negotiations, there needs to be a workers' party in and I'm not talking about even like the workers' party unions. Like, there really has to be like the laborers, the people who are really putting in that work, that needs to be sitting down at the table of these negotiations, because these leaders, these so-called leaders, are going to, as long as their pockets, they have their pockets aligned and they're able to get something big out of the deal, they'll negotiate a deal no matter how it's going to impact, how negatively it's going to impact the working class. When I'm listening to, when you check out the documentary, they talk about, the workers are talking about how the Chinese, right, are corrupt, using corrupt business practices. They cheat them in deals, right? And when they're selling the cobalt to them, right, they break their scales so they can't measure. All types of just like, strategy tactics that they use to not pay full price for the cobalt. They're all, and these workers are already being exploited, and they're exploiting, and now they're cheating them. But where's the protection for these workers that are being cheated? So, there's a whole lot with this, and we have to, I think, there's things that we can do as far as, there's some things that we need to do as far as revolution, but even, before that, I think like there has to be some sort of accountability to the governments of these companies, right, that is doing business in Congo. And we need to make a demand that, these companies can no longer do business in the Congo, or it has to be, if they are doing business, these are the terms, right? And it has to be terms that's laid down by the masses of African people. So, there's a lot, but we're going to move on to the next story. Frank. And before you go too, I want to appreciate everybody for tapping in. Make sure that you like and share the podcast. And after the story, we're going to be going into the book Revolutionary Path. So I'm going to put a link to that book in the chat in a minute.
All right. The next story here is the newly elected president of the Republic of Liberia. As you can see down there, folks, like I was saying, the new trend now that the West are coming up with is to make sure to support all folks, all people who don't understand this new trend, okay, of African youth, this new trend of developing the minds of Africans youth to become the leader of Africa and to lead African people. They understand that. So they are working very craftively to put in old folks who always says to Africans, youth, you are the next generational leader, but they do not bring out the next generational leader. Now, let me get to the article here. We're not going to see everything because I did not subscribe to it, but I'm going to do that because, so it says Africa's intelligence, right? The continent data. So that's where this article is coming from. So it says the inner cycle, Liberia, Boakai, draw a Salif. Now, Salif here is the past president, not George Weah, the one to whom George Weah succeeded, the one to whom Joseph Boakai, this man here, was the vice president to Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Now, from 2005 to 2017, the inner cycle Liberia, Boakai dropped on Sirleaf era talent for government, form of government, let's say. Now, the new Liberian leader is surrounding himself by colleagues he previously worked with as vice president. He is also having to deal with the influence of former warlord Prince Johnson, who is causing tension within the presidential party. Now, I will take this out here and let me see. So as you can see right there, this is a man. I'm not going to be sarcastic here. He does not know his age. He does not know when he was born. But this man is actually in his 90s. All right. Now, imagine on a day, and this may have a pacemaker in him already. And in Africa, we call it battery. Okay. But he have a pacemaker in him. So he don't have that strength. What would a 90-year-old man be doing as a president in Africa? All right. And here it is. America heavily supported this man. The United States heavily supported this man against President George Manuel Weah. And part of the reason to that is President George Manuel Weah opposed a lot of American selfish interests, opposed a lot of American oppressive interests and foreign policy interests that was not in line and support and guideline of the Liberian nation. And now, what I want to say here is, you see the Black Caucus in the United States here. That Black Caucus is very useless. The same way they are useless for Black people in this country, that's how they are useless on the African continent. And the Black Caucus is a form of the 1822 so-called free slave that they took to Liberia. As we know, as we have come to uncover the story, the people that took to Liberia, they took to Liberia in 1822, they were not free slaves. They were forced to go to Africa to do what they did in Liberia. So in the same way, that Black Caucus is still, okay, a slave working on behalf of the slave master. The slave master, the descendant of the slave master. Now, Lena Thomas Greenfield was in Liberia, if to say, she is the ambassador of the United States in Liberia. If to say, she is the vice president to Liberia. If to say, she is the president to Liberia. If to say, she is the head of the National Election Commission to Liberia if to say she have any significant influence in Liberia. The same woman who supported the invasion of Niger, okay, the same woman who supported Nana Akufo-Addo and Tinubu and the likes of Macky Sall to wage war on Niger, to wage sanction on Niger, that went to the United Nations to advocate to destroy Africa, to destroy Niger. It is the same leader that was in Liberia stating this is the time the United States is coming to support Liberia. Liberia have now a great president that the United States can work with. What a hypocritical statement. The United States been in Liberia since 1822. There have been governments who have come and gone. Why did the United States not work with those governments to improve the educational system, the healthcare system, the human capacity development, and so forth and so on in that country? But rather, the United States supported 14, 15 years of war that destroyed the country and killed over 250,000 people. More than that, that was just the count they gave. The United States sat down in her embassy. But it is today because a government have come in to support her selfish interests. That is why, during the past 6 years, the United States supported, okay, individual sanction against the George Weah-led government because they felt that those people were a threat to the American foreign policy. So that's why America, Washington, D.C., puts, how they call it, pressure on George Weah until that government left. If America loved Liberia, why she couldn't work with George Weah? She could not do it because it was the same George Weah that banned the exportation of raw material to America. It was the same George Weah that banned the importation, or let's say the exportation of rubber, okay, Firestone. The car people ride in America, the Firestone, the Brimstone, George Weah banned it. And he said it, as we read it here before, he said the deal was not favorable to Liberia. Do you think America will love George Weah by banning rubber material or latex or raw material from coming to America? Those were the same thing that Charles Ture fought for, and today Charles Ture is in a haze. But ignorant Liberia, ignorantly, we will say America put Charles Ture into the haze because of the crime committed. It was not in our interest. And that was the same reason they never supported George Weah, because if America loved Liberia, she was going to work with George Weah and make sure and change policy and look into the Firestone D and change things around. But again, those are the same people that work in the alien government and to whom this current president said they failed to implement policy during their 12-year regime in the alien government, and that's why that government failed. And it is the same government official again, the same vice president who is now president, bringing the same people in after the 12 years. They all ran away. They came to America and they ran propaganda alongside with the Black Caucus. And today they are in Liberia again to exploit and to give Liberia back to the colonizer and not for the interests of the people. Those are the things we're talking about, that the colonizer are ahead of because they want to make sure to put all folks in power.
Not even just old folk, but people that are easy for them to control, you know, like they'll, and of course, like, I mean, the pattern has been the old guard, right? That's been around, that's content with the system. But anybody that they can find that will align with the social system, the political economy, this is going to be the voice. If they can find someone young, that'd be great, because this was somebody that they can have for the next 50 or 60 years. And some of these people have been around, like you said, they've been in these positions, for 60 years. Here in America, we have, congressmen and senators that can hold office for an unlimited amount of time. They don't have to leave office until they die, essentially. It's different for the president, but, congressmen and senators, they can run an unlimited amount of time. So these are people who have been in office. We have some people that have been in office since the 60s, since the 70s, right? And we wonder why nothing has changed. So it's serious contradiction again. Like when you're dealing with colonial capitalism, unless there's a revolution and you're completely dismantling the system and building up something new, we build up our alternatives, right, and just stop engaging in this system because we have something else that we built among ourselves. Because that's another, there's different strategies in dismantling, I think, our colonial capitalism. And one of those ways is when we have resources, we don't put it back in the system. We invest it in something new, a new system, right? And we gradually, or, abruptly, if we come to a certain level of consciousness, but that comes through, the raising of consciousness. It comes through the education, through media that we control, schools that we control, right? And we can move away from engaging with these colonizers, because as long as we're tied to the system, they will remain in power, because we have to go through. They are the gatekeepers at the end of the day. In order for you to become wealthy in this system, and you come from our communities, you have to help destroy our communities. You have to be a co-conspirator against the interests of African people, Black people around the world. So, thanks for uplifting this story. I'm going to put a link to the book in the chat. This is The Revolutionary Path. Hey, Kwame Nkrumah was trying to he was schooling us to the game like a long time ago, and I'm glad we're reading of this and the works of Nkrumah and other leaders of the time, because one way we can like really identify people who are serious about revolution is, are they speaking the same language that some of these leaders, our past leaders, our ancestors were speaking, who were revolutionaries, right? If they're straying away from that path, then we have to question it. And I'm not saying that they were 100% right, but there was something fundamental about what they were teaching, which is the overthrow of the system, the dismantling of the system, right? And they were speaking about unity, not division. So I said a lot. Let me share this. Let's get into this. For those who, it's on the screen, but for those who want to follow along off screen, we're on page 125, chapter 9, page 125, right? And this is part 2, I believe. Yeah, part 2, the socialist construction and the struggle for the liberation and unification of Africa. 3 alternatives are open to African states. First, to unite and to save our continent. Secondly, to continue in disunity and to disintegrate. Or thirdly, to sell out and capitulate before the forces of imperialism and neocolonialism. Brother Frank was just talking about people who does these things. They take the third option, right? But those last 2 we have a problem with. As each year passes, our failure to unite strengthens our enemies and delays the fulfillment of the aspirations of our people. Long before 1957, I made it clear that the 2 major tasks to be undertaken after the ending of colonial rule in Ghana would be the vigorous prosecution of a Pan-African policy to advance the African Revolution, and at the same time, the adoption of measures to construct socialism in Ghana. For political freedom is only the first step in the path towards full independence. It is a necessary prerequisite for economic and social progress in Africa, but it is meaningless while any part of the continent remains unliberated and while the masses are exploited by the forces, both domestic and foreign, of international monopoly finance. Pan-Africanism had to be reactivated on the soil of Africa, and it seemed that this could best be begun by the calling of a conference of independent African states, to be followed closely by an all-African peoples conference to discuss common problems and to organize tactics and strategies. Among the most pressing of common problems was the fact that by far the larger part of Africa was still unliberated. There were, in fact, only 8 independent African states in 1958 when I called the Conference of Independent African States. They were in Ghana, Ethiopia, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, Egypt, Liberia, and Sudan. Each of them was represented at the Accra Conference. The countries participating in the Conference of Independent African States, held in Africa in April 1958, agreed to coordinate their economic planning to take measures to develop and encourage trade among their countries, to exchange educational, cultural, and scientific information, to improve communications between the African states, to assist people still under colonial rule in their struggle to be free, and to provide training and educational facilities for them. It was decided that the 15th of April should be named African Freedom Day, to mark each year the onward progress of the liberation movement and to symbolize the determination of the African people of the people of Africa to free themselves from foreign domination and exploitation. The Accra Conference of Independent African States was the first conference of its kind ever to be held, and it paved the way for a succession of other Pan-African conferences of various kinds. A process was begun of direct consultation between African states, a process which has continued ever since, and which was marked by the setting up of the Organization of African Unity in 1963. I think there's a lot in here. I don't want to move too far away from what I read. One thing that stood out too, April 15th, African Freedom Day, which I think was first celebrated in 1958, which I think he mentions here. I've thought about Malcolm X. There was African Freedom Day that was actually acknowledged in the United States. And in 1959, Malcolm X spoke at that first African Freedom Day that was acknowledged or celebrate. What's the word I'm looking for? Recognized, I guess, celebrated in 1959 in Harlem. And if you ever see that speech, I'll share a link to it as well. But when he's giving a speech and he's saying, how can so few white people rule so many black people? That was at the African Freedom Day. I'm gonna share that. It's very powerful. He said that's the question we should be asking ourselves. Another thing too, that really stood out, or what I thought about is, and Nkrumah's talking about the changes that are taking place in regards to these Pan-African conferences. And he mentioned earlier in this text, one of the articles that he wrote, of how there was sort of like a bourgeois element of Pan-Africanism in the Pan-African conferences that were being held, and so you had, these leaders, the bourgeois leaders who were convening and talking about what to do. And most of these conferences, Dr. W.B. Du Bois resided over. He was sort of the father of Pan-Africanism in a sense, at least like this movement from the 19th. Not the father. Let me not go for the sake of this conversation though, but he carried on Pan-Africanism, with the Pan-African Congresses, right? And so it was during the 5th Pan-African Conference or Congress that there were more African leaders, right? And there were African leaders who not only presided but led up the discussion and the path forward for Pan-Africanism. And the mantle was sort of passed over to Nkrumah. There's actually a discussion, a letter that Du Bois wrote to Nkrumah, and sort of passing his mantle over to him. It was discussed in the letter. And last thing I'll say, Nkrumah talked about this revolutionary Pan-Africanism and that it has to be led by the African working class, the masses of African people. And this is what really was undermined, you know, with the forming of the Organization of African Unity, which is a whole history behind that. We'll save it for another discussion. But the intentions of the OAU was undermined. And of course, the removal of Nkrumah. And so Pan-Africanism never materialized the way Nkrumah wanted it to materialize. And we're the living proof of it today, right? Any thoughts? I don't want to over talk this, but if you had anything to add, Frank, go right ahead.
Yeah. You asked a very good question. Like, as you read, he said, like, how can few European, conquer masses of Africans? For example, doing the slave trade, and doing slavery, in Europe and in America, right? Well, one white man have the authority or the power over 100 black able-bodied men. Where did this thing came from? And like you said, in order to have, how do you call it, a freedom, right? You have to have a revolutionary mindset. And to be frank, European have that kind of a revolutionary mindset, very brutal. Now, the revolutionary mindset that they have is not like they were in crisis or they were in captivity, or someone colonized them, all right? But their mindset, they have, right, was this. You see, the two religions on planet Earth that have caused mass murder and mass destruction, the Muslim faith and the Christian faith. Now, to my brothers and sisters who are Muslim and who are Christian, that you are listening or you will watch the recording, there's a revolutionary channel. We speak, they speak. All right? Now, the two most religions in history that have committed the West crime and are still committing the West crime are religion. And those two religions are Christianity and the Muslim faith. They have killed more people and destruction than any religion. And that is why religious, are a form of deterrent faith, because if you become a Christian believe that their way is it. Without their will, without their belief, without their doctrine, nothing else, nothing more, nothing less. Muslim faith believe that their will is it. Without their doctrine, nothing more, nothing less, and nothing else. The only diverse religion in the world is the African spirituality. In Africa, we have different practice of ways of belief. But stay ancient Africa, we still live as Africans, and a lot of time was not even African. The name was not African. So if you look at the ancient map of the continent, you will not see division, boundary, this and that. It's all open, freely, and widely. It was a time period where every tribe was just a nation, but no boundary, everything within there. Now, you can go and still interact with the other faith, with the other religion. Now, for example, in a time in Africa, during ancient time, I'm speaking about ancient time, if there's a crisis and the gods within that town or within that kingdom cannot handle it or cannot identify the calamity or what is happening within that kingdom, what did they do? They say they will have to consult another god, the god of this kingdom. They will send delegate or representative to go to that kingdom, to that god. They have their god, right? But they will go to another god in another kingdom to seek for solution. So they did not depend only on their God. They also did interdependency on other belief to solve all their problem. That's how it was like. So any spirituality that only believe in one doctrine, that it is me, and if it is not me, it is not you. And that's how Christianity which is not spiritual. That's how the Muslim faith, which is not spiritual, that's how they have come to destroy life and property and society and culture. That's the reality we are saying here. I know some of my brothers and sisters will disagree, but go and do your research and look at it. But right, okay, spiritual, it should be a practice where you cannot destroy life and property and people on a mass basis only because someone did not agree with you. Now, let me back for a little bit. To do that, because they know all of them, their interest lies in Africa. What did they do? They create a place called Mecca. What did they do? Because they know African, we are spiritual. And when we become spiritual, we are deeply involved. So in order to get Africans, the European came with their own religion. That is not to say it was European that brought Christianity to Africa. No, it was not Christianity. The Bible is African history. It's collections of African thoughts, of African arts, of African proverbs that they put in there. It's African history. It was not even called the Bible until the 14th, the 1600. What was it called then? It was not called the Bible. Now, let's go to that aspect of Christianity. So it was not the white men that brought Christianity to Africa. Now, Christianity is not only a belief that Africans should be involved in. It became Christianity because the white men, the European, wanted to put their face on it, so they had to change the name. Now, and when they changed it, what did they do? They created a place called Asia today where Africans can go there. And the same way, the Muslim faith created their place called Mecca, where Africans can go there. But here it is. Where is that part in Ethiopia that existed before Mecca? Why can't they go there? How do you call it? Mali, the Empire of Mali, okay? Timbuktu, that existed way back. Why those places can be African Mecca? Because you know what? European will not have a Mecca in Africa. Okay, a Muslim will not have a Mecca in Africa. European will not have an Asia in Africa. That will change the narrative. Then, if the narrative change, then what they bring to us will become false. So they have to create an area to where they come from to say this is how it is. And then everything about Africa is primitive. Everything about Africa, it did not exist when European culture was existing. But yet then, history will say to us that the oldest woman ever lived was came from Africa, or how do you call it, by the name of Lisi or something. All right. The history will say civilization started for Africa. If civilization started for Africa, then how can you say those things came from Europe, those things came from America, and those things? If they started from Africa, that means life started from Africa. That means activities, culture, belief system started from Africa. Then if there should be a Mecca, it should be in Africa. If there should be an Asia, it should be in Africa. And as we know, history tells us that Asia is within Africa, because before them, the place Asia is today was part of Africa. But when, in order to carry on their narrative, they have to divide it so that the history, their story that they will bring, it will fit exactly to their perspective, and there will be no way we can debunk them. But yet they state, our forefathers, what they did what they could do. And in other words, today, evidence are there, and those evidence are not being destroyed. And that's how the white men have been able to revolutionize their perspective, their belief. That's how the other people have been able to revolutionize their perspective and their belief, and we Africans fall into it. And that's why today we believe that everything good is from the other side and everything bad is from the other side.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, and I think you know, it speaks to this quote right here that that Rooney had put up. Rooney B. The African political class cannot envision working beyond the European trading and economic paradigm, globalization. Everything core that it engages in hinges on said model. And I think like that's, you know, Black people. That's just from, I won't even have wanted to share something, but yeah, I think that that's what Black, you know, people in general, you know, or African people. I'm not sure if you're just talking about the continent, but whether you are or not, but just like African people in general, where we are, and I think like that's a problem here in the States where we're based. You know, African people can't see anything outside this European paradigm, this Americanism, you know, this system of thought and this system of behavior. And with that said, it, you know, we're, you know, we have been sort of manipulated into thinking that in order for us to have salvation or have any salvation or to be able to advance ourselves as a people, we have to follow the design that was created by the European, right? And at the end of the day, that's all it is. It's like we're part of a design. I think like that's the trap. It's like we have to get back to, you know, or have the understanding that all of these things are constructs are man-made, and there is a plan behind the design. And once we had, you know, come into that power of thought and understanding and become the creators that we are meant to be, you know, that's going to be the beginning of this path for liberation. When we say, like, you know, when you begin to question what it means to be an American, like people, you have Black people who really, you know, brought into that, like they have drunk all of the Europeans' Kool-Aid. And you can't, you know, they're more patriotic than the most patriotic white person, right? Because, you know, my ancestors died, you know, for us to vote and all of these things. No disrespect to anybody, you know what I'm saying? You know, these were some choices that some of our people made. But it does not mean that we're beholden to the choices that some of our ancestors may have made, right? And I think like we have to come to that consciousness and understanding that, yo, we can create something new and we don't have to follow the rules or the guidelines that has been laid down by our oppressor and exploiter. I'm gonna give you the last word, Frank.
I mean, my last one here, my last one here is, look, I know we should expect these things. European, you know, do what they do because it is in their favor. Okay. Other races do, or other nation or other continent do what they do because it is in their favor. That's how they survive. All right. If anything that you should do to survive and to remain on top, to control the food chain, okay, to control, okay, the thoughts of men, right? And you survive from it. You think you're going to leave that? So what other people are doing, I mean, as much as we can talk about it, right? Fine. But what are we going to do as people, as race, to turn around and say, you know what? If other people or if other race or races can put their first based on their race, based on their identity, we must do the same thing. Because I tell you, the reality here is, if we think Black people, the only way we will survive, okay, and not just survive when I say survive, but the only way we will take our place is to collaborate with other people, is to work with other people, we fail. Because other people are not doing it. They are not doing it. They fix their first, and before they think about others. They make sure their interest first before they think about others. And if their interest means sufferings to other people, so be it to them. It is in our same manner. It is in our same thoughts. It is in our same view and perspective that we ought to take as well. as Black people, we should put our interests first and work collectively, just how others are doing. If we are to use others in our favor against them, so be it, because they do the same to us.
And that's a word right there, Conrad Sayero. Yeah, that's the question. We're gonna fight for Uhuru. We're gonna fight for freedom to our last breath. I actually want to share. We're want to appreciate everybody too for tapping in to this discussion. We're back at a regular time, as you can see, 10 a.m. On Saturday. So Frank is going to be on with his weekly podcast tomorrow, though, at 1 p.m. Anything you want to say about that? Make sure y'all tap in.
Make sure
go on in.
Tomorrow, so we're going to be on 1 p.m. as usual, right? So we're going to be so if you go on YouTube on our channel, right, and you check the title, it says this is Ginger to Liberia, all right? And then the next one, so it's there. So check it out, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow.
All right,
right. So the next one, it says the United States or the U.S. Want to usher Nelson Mandela. So I know you may be thinking in your head, what do they want to usher, right? Now, don't get it twisted. We still have our artifacts in Europe and in America, and they are still selling it. The reality here is these Europeans are still selling Black people. They are still selling Africans. We are still commodity. What in the world, in this modern time, anybody will want to sell Blacks on the market?
Yo, this system breeds that, though. It breeds genocide. It breeds, the dehumanization process is a part of this system. All of that, and that's why we're going to continue to talk about it. We have to begin to start seeing the world differently, thinking differently. But and it's not, it's not being negative. We want to have a positive outlook on our future, but it's going to come with understanding of what we can achieve and what we can do, because a lot of our people become disillusioned, they become depressed under this system. But let me share this really quick. This is happening tomorrow. Black Alliance for Peace has an event. I think this is a virtual event. But brother Toivo, who been on We Charge Colonialism, I've interviewed him, I think, a couple of times. He's going to be speaking. Are you able to see this? Make sure you can see. All right, yeah. If you go to our Instagram, you'll be able to, We Charge Colonialism, you'll be able to see all the information for this. But Namibia and Palestine's collective stand against apartheid and genocide, they're going to be having a discussion. Toivo is a brilliant brother. So definitely tap into that. And again, you can find this flyer and information on We Charge Colonialism IG. So again, man, appreciate everybody as usual. If it's your first time being here, subscribe to the channel, like and share so people can come back and watch these podcasts. So till next time, everyone, peace, power, guru. Say that again.
They say you should post the link. There's a request saying the link should be posted. Sayaro says you should post the link.
What, for the Instagram?
I think what you are just showing right now.
That fly, I don't have a link to that flyer, but I think I can post our Instagram link, though. I can do that because it's already posted on our Instagram. So I can share that in the chat. Oh, well, I didn't. If I had if I had put it in our drive, I would have been able to share.
Yeah, it's not okay. It's not in the draft. Yeah.
Nah. But let me share this. Boom. Here we go. For the people. For the people. Hopefully that takes you to our Instagram, and I think it's the last post on our Instagram. So, and I'll be posting it again as well. All right. Again, peace, Black power, African power, Uhuru. Till next time.